So, Cecil, what is your favorite part of getting to see A Quiet Place Part 2 tonight?
Um, I got this really cool making of art book.
Oh.
Have you checked the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome to the horror show. I'm Cecil Laird,
And Jaime and Fuego here.
and we are here to do a long-awaited review, at least for us.
A year in the making, man.
Indeed, because this is a movie for which we had been lined up to go to the early screening of back in 2020 when it was originally supposed to release. This was the last early screener we were set up to go see before everything was canceled and shut down due to the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it was March 2020, if I recall correctly, and we were right there, and then everything went to hell.
Yep. So now here we are all the way in May of 2021, and we are finally here to discuss A Quiet Place Part 2. We finally got a chance to see this, so we saw it on the Monday that it came out. So you guys are probably seeing the review that Thursday. So, because there's, we didn't want to spoil a bunch of it until, everyone got a chance to see. Well, we're not going to spoil,
And there's
I should
not
say.
as much to spoil.
There's really
as
not
we
that
were
much
really
to spoil. We
expecting.
may do a
Yeah.
small spoiler section at the end of the review, but
Yeah.
there's really nothing that we can't cover in 5 minutes in a spoiler section in this one, to
No.
be honest with
No,
you.
not at all.
This was a very lean and mean movie. It was an in and out in 90 minutes, and it was continuation picking up right where the last one left off. Kind of, and we'll get into it. So we normally do our overall thoughts, then we talk about the story, the acting, the actual filmmaking itself, the sound design, and then finally the effects. So we'll touch on as much of it as we can, and my overall thoughts are that this was one of my most anticipated movies of 2020. Unfortunately, this is probably not going to be one of my favorites of the year. It was good, it was entertaining,
Yeah.
but it did not have the impact, anywhere near the impact that the first one did, both in story and, the acting was good, but as I said, this movie lacked the impact that the first one did, in my opinion. So it was still good, it was still enjoyable, but nowhere near the level of the first one as far as overall movie happiness that I had after
Yeah.
the first viewing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, and I have said it countless times, the burden of expectation is rough, and it really plays itself out in this. I enjoyed it, and it was really cool to reconnect with these characters, specifically our deaf girl.
Yes,
You know, she
Millicent
really,
Simmons.
yeah, she takes front and center in this film after kind of sharing stuff with her mother, Emily Blunt, in the previous film. But the script just wasn't as tight and wasn't as strong, and it didn't have those moments like the birth scene where I was on the edge of my seat just cringing. And I'm not even a woman. I can only imagine how a lady would have felt like seeing that and trying so hard to be quiet and stuff. Killian is a great addition. He's probably the best new thing in this film, but as a whole, it felt a little disjointed, especially with the narrative and where it was trying to figure out where it was going to go with this new world and dystopian sort of landscape.
So we'll get into all of it, starting with the story. So again, the story picks up right where the last one leaves off, except it picks and
Kind of.
chooses.
As
Like,
you
here's the
pointed
thing,
out to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
At the end, I don't want to, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but let's just say that they kind of gloss over one of the big things that the last movie ended on, right? Like,
Major
they
things.
were being rushed. It was my understanding that they were being rushed by a bunch of monsters. And in this one, picks up right where the last one left off, and that is no longer a concern, apparently. So outside of that, it picks up right where the last one left off. They have to go and try and link up with one of the communities that we saw via the bonfires in the first movie. They see there's one person's still lighting the bonfire, and so they want to go to that. And everything that was in the trailers for this movie happened in the first 30 minutes of this movie.
Sure.
So that's kind of nice. A little bit of the third act stuff happened in the trailer, but they made it kind of look like flashback stuff. So it was interesting to see how they marketed it. But for the most part, it was new material past the 30-minute point. But it is Emily Blunt and her 3 surviving children from the first movie trying to make it to this new area. They actually, they get there. You see in the trailer they get there. But what happens when they get to the area where Cillian Murphy and anyone else in that area might be? And where do they go from there? That's the long and short of the story. And I agree with Fuego. He mentioned it in his, overall, that this story, while not a lot happened, it still somehow seemed less focused than the first one did. The first one was very straightforward. It was this family's story in this apocalypse. And this one continued the family's story, but in order to do so, at one point, he splinters the group into 3 different factions, essentially. Yeah. And so it starts to, go from this person's experiences to this person's experiences to this person's experiences, and then back and back and back and back and back and back, slowly progressing each one. And personally, I wasn't a fan of that structure. Yeah. I felt, like you said, it was less focused, and so it was still tense. It was still very tense moments
at times,
as when this stuff was happening, but I was the least invested in one because it was just a character making stupid decisions over and over again.
One character in particular,
Yeah. So trying not to spoil it, it's like you said, it felt unfocused, and so I didn't care as much about what was going on. It was all well done, like, when the creatures were around, I was nervous for the characters on screen, and I wanted to see how they were going to get out of things, yes. But I had less emotional investment this time around than I did the first time. Significantly, even so. I would agree with you. And so, while the story was still interesting and engaging, it wasn't nearly as interesting as the things portrayed the first time around. Yeah. I don't know how else to say it other than that.
Yeah, you had it spot on, man. And I feel like I'm inclined to give this movie a pass because of the fact that I loved and connected with these characters so much.
You were riding on the connections from movie 1,
yeah,
as opposed to anything happening in movie 2.
Yes, exactly. And so it was disjointed and all over the place, and just didn't have a focused, like, structured narrative in this one. And I'm not gonna, diss on Krasinski, but I don't think he'd ever scripted something before.
I don't know. So he directed the first one. He did not write the first one.
Yeah,
but he did write the second one.
Yeah, he wrote this one.
This was just much more of a straightforward A to B story for the characters, whereas it could have used, if they had taken the time to go into some other flashbacks of Millicent and Emily Blunt's past interactions before things, right? There was,
as opposed to just day one, which we get, which is very prolific.
Yeah, you get day one, which is, it's nice and interesting to see, but in the first one, you cared about the relationship with Millicent Simmons and John Krasinski because they showed why they were rocky leading up to it. And I feel like that's the element that was missing in this one. They could have had something like that with her and the mom from beforehand that was brought forward and resolved in this current timeline that was a problem from before everything happened, like they did in the first one. It would have maybe felt a little derivative, but it would have had more of an impact than it did this way.
And yet I feel like they tried to duplicate that dynamic with the Cillian, situation
a little bit.
With
they
her.
Tried, yeah.
He is like a stand-in father figure, so to speak.
And it did feel a little forced.
Yeah, it was a little forced, but I mean, I like Cillian Murphy a lot, going back to 28 Days Later and various other things, and so I bought into that. That was still, for me, the emotional core of this, which was really weird because I thought that,
it wasn't that emotional.
Yeah, it wasn't that emotional. And then also you would think that there would be so much more of a connection with, mother and son and all these.
You'd think they would have told more of his story.
Yeah.
As to what happened, because there's
little, because
there's
you
a link.
Tell,
you find out that there's a link that you weren't aware of based on the trailers between the characters.
Yeah,
and
well,
so
that's
I would like to have I would like to have seen his backstory explored more. And it's not, and so that's a little bit of a bummer. But anyway, so these characters are forced to get through things together. Now, acting-wise, everyone's fine. Everyone's on point.
Yeah.
I was a little annoyed with one of the kids, but that's just because of what he was given to do through the movie.
Yeah.
But otherwise, everyone acquits themselves fine. I mean, there's not a ton of people that you get to see. So I thought the acting was great. What about you?
Yeah, I thought our hearing impaired little lady was awesome. Before, in the previous film, she was strong, but in this one, the strength just multiplied, and she was awesome. She is really the main character in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I would,
She gets the most screen time.
Yeah, I would kind of contend that. And so, aside from her and Killian, I thought Emily Blunt was underutilized, man. I thought she was. She didn't have as much interesting stuff to do. In this, she didn't have iconic scenes like in the previous film. Like, the birthing scene, holy God.
Everyone
dude.
but Millicent was felt a little sidelined.
Yeah.
And you keep referring to the birthing scene. I feel like the big scene that was missing from this was the basement water scene.
Okay.
Where she's reaching for the baby and the creature rises up right. Like, that was the most tense scene that I had seen in a long time. And yeah, there was nothing like that in this movie.
Yeah, and that's a credit to the screenwriters who Krasinski, assisted them, since he was in the directorial seat. But, man, doing everything himself in this, I don't know if it was necessarily the wisest choice, but he had a pitch, and it hit. So, there you go.
It was fine. It just wasn't tremendous. Now, filmmaking-wise, the movie was great. It was presented beautifully. There were tense moments, but it wasn't as tension building. It didn't take as much time to build the tension in certain scenes as it did in the first movie, which is, I think, why the scares landed better, I think, in the first movie.
And that's a credit to the screenplay, I would say.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, not all, not entirely, but partially. It's also in the filmmaking. But yes, it was a beautifully presented movie. The sound design was awesome.
Yeah.
Again, going into the points where Millicent Simmons is the focus, then a lot of the sound drops out because she's the deaf character.
And
so
I was going to ask you,
I thought that those transitions and those scenes were utilized well with the lack of sound entirely.
Yeah, so was there more of an emphasis in this film compared to the previous?
They did. They dropped the sound out a lot more.
I thought there was.
They dropped the sound out a lot more. And that's the thing. When you do it that much, I feel like it lessens the impact than the few times you got to do it in the first movie.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to inquire about, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes, that is the case. So, it's beautifully presented. Effects-wise, it's great. All the time you get to focus on the creatures when they're close is great. When they're moving, they still look a little CG-ish because they move so fast for as big as they are that there's still a bit of your brain that's like, that doesn't feel right. They're moving too fast for as big as they are. And then they're blurred, and so they don't look as realistic to me when they're moving around as fast as they are. It's when they're slow, stalking, very much nearby that they feel the most real.
Yeah, with
so
that, lunging kind of thing that they do. Do you think they'd look better in this one? Because I'm not sure,
Well, we saw them more in this one.
We did.
There was more in the light as well.
Yeah.
So you saw them more. I don't know that they looked better. Once again, there's still very much a crossover between the Demogorgon from Stranger Things and the monster from Cloverfield.
Yeah, I feel there was more rampant quick attacks in this as opposed to seeing them within low light and
a lot was left to your imagination in the first movie, and in this one the creatures are basically 4 appendaged bowling balls because they just literally knock through people and just knock them back. They don't eat them
which
or
was
anything
kind of a
like that. Which was
criticism
a criticism for me because they're literally just knocking people around, just knocking people into things, and that's not what's scary about them. They're big mouths and big scary teeth. I would be scared to be eaten, but they never once focused on that, so it was a little odd,
Yeah, they just mangle and maul, and that's about it,
But effects-wise for you, did you have any other points regarding any of that?
Nothing specific. I mean, aside from the fact that I can call the design of the characters as, very similar to Stranger Things and, various others. But, I mean, bottom line, if I'm going to give, a retread to overall reaction, man, I was really, really hoping this was going to be supremely badass, and it didn't quite hit that point, unfortunately. So
It's interesting. I was hoping for more, but it just ended up falling a little bit flat for me, unfortunate. It was entertaining, but it just wasn't
Agreed.
nearly as good as the first one, and I guess maybe my hopes were set too high, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Just nowhere near as good as the first one, unfortunately.
well, and also the fact that like such an abrupt ending without spoiling things.
It
you
did.
know.
When it ended, I was like, that's not it, is it? And then it was done, and I was like, oh, man.
Yeah, it felt very much like Spiral, and the fact that like two of the biggest horror films that have come out in May with this resurgence of getting back into theaters, we're like, okay, right, like that's it, that's it, okay,
So,
fine.
I mean, the coolest thing to come out of it might have been the fact
Yes,
that
Nita.
we got our hands
Check it out,
on this book here. It is A Quiet Place, Making of a Silent World. So it is introduction and commentary by John Krasinski.
Truly.
It's photography by Johnny Cornorier.
And his wife is a part.
Forward by Emily Blunt.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a photo book, a photo making of book, and
So this is kind of an unboxing.
yeah, a little bit of an unboxing.
Check it
Let's
out.
take a look at it. And
Yeah.
they had 3 copies of this that the radio station was giving away, and luckily Fuego got called on. He got half the answer, and I got half the answer.
Yeah.
And so
Well, we're a
we
team.
now
You
have
guys
this in our collection. So I'm going to be going through it. I'm excited about it because I like making of stuff and beautiful photography and things like that.
Yeah,
so
nice.
I think it's a cool little
Nice.
thing. So that might be the best thing we got out of this. We'll see.
Yeah, I am actually gonna be rewatching this because Catherine loved the first film, and so we're gonna go rewatch it.
Maybe you'll
Friday.
like it better the
We're gonna
second
rewatch
time.
it Friday, but yeah.
All right. So why don't you guys let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Keep it spoiler free, like we
Yes.
kept this review spoiler free.
Porfa.
I guess real quick, let's do the spoilers because we did mention it. So guys, spoiler section, just real briefly, okay?
Kind of.
So you got 5 seconds to get out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So
Adios.
yeah.
Everybody lives.
Everybody lives. Everybody lives. The
Yeah.
family makes it to where you see in the trailer where it's Cillian Murphy's boiler room, sort of, Freddy's home away
Yeah.
from home scenario where they can hide in the boilers from the creatures. But then Millicent decides to investigate this radio signal where it's someone playing Somewhere Beyond the Sea.
Yeah.
And she takes it as a code where like it's people, it must be a group where people are saying to come, and so it's only like a day away, so she takes off to try and see if there are other survivors or people that could help, because early in the movie her brother steps in a bear trap,
Yeah, it's
and then
it's the most like pushing the PG-13 rating that they do in the entirety.
it's a
of the
little
film.
bit like Side Quest, A Quiet
Yeah.
Place edition, because
Yeah.
the oxygen tank that they've been using for the little hide-a-baby crib that they have is almost out. So Emily Blunt, while Millicent is off on her journey and she sends Cillian Murphy after her to try and save her, she goes and tries to find new oxygen tanks for, the baby's crib thing. And meanwhile, the son is left behind to watch the baby. And then it leads to one of the most tense scenes where the kid puts the baby in the thing and doesn't realize that the oxygen tank is almost out, so he almost suffocates the baby. That freaks me the hell out.
Yeah.
Then he almost suffocates because he accidentally
that's
closes the boiler the whole way.
As a current father.
Ugh,
Holy
yeah,
crap,
yeah.
really.
As someone with a baby that's not far from that age, it really fucked with me. I gotta be honest. I did not like that part, but it was, that's what was going on. So Millicent was off with Cillian Murphy investigating this island, while Emily Blunt was off trying to get her oxygen tanks, while the son was watching over the baby in this boiler room area. And they all encounter creatures in different ways, shapes, and forms. The thing that I was referring to where the trailer made it look like it was flashback is when Cillian Murphy is, trying to help people as creatures attack. You think I thought that was the flashback, like day one for him, but no, it's actually the creatures attacking, a creature attacking the island, because we find out that the creatures can't swim in this movie.
That was the one thing I was like holding off
sorry.
on, like mentioning. No, you're
Apologies.
fine. No,
Go ahead,
no.
explain how we find out.
No, there was a very like weird like aquatic aspect to the fact that they cannot deal with water, And so it plays a pivotal part in everything that is going on. So
Yeah, at one point they run across this group of evil humans that almost take Millicent and, leave Cillian Murphy behind, but Cillian attracts a creature and Millicent avoids it, but the creature starts taking them all out, and Cillian is in the water and he makes a sound, and one of the creatures dives into the water after him, and then it can't swim and it can't get itself back on the boat, so it basically sinks.
Yeah, and it's a weird bait and switch because of the fact that from the trailer, we really anticipated that, it was going to be like Walking Dead and like nasty-ass humans, messing with each other,
Kind
so
of.
to speak.
They touch on that briefly.
Yeah. We get a taste of it, but without spoiling too much, it's not as prevalently, prominent as we were all anticipating, so...
Yeah, so, I mean, and then, Millicent and Cillian Murphy make it to a radio station, broadcasting to all the different, radios across the valley, and so she basically sets her, at the end of the movie, she sets her ear thing, we don't realize it's the end of the movie, by the way, but she sets her earpiece onto the microphone, so it broadcasts that squeal signal to radios. Anyone that tunes to this signal, their radio is now a weapon. So they kind of expand on the idea from the first one, but like that's it. Emily Blunt gets back with her 2 oxygen tanks. She uses one to blow up a creature that's blocking her way back to the kid. She gets back to the kid and saves the son and the baby, and then the son uses the radio when Millicent sends the signal through. He's got a radio, so he uses it to back the creature off, then he shoots the creature. Millicent stabs her creature with a big metal rod, and like they succeed, and then they all meet back up, and that's how it ends, right? And like that's where we stop.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and it is like a boom of a stop. I mean, it's like
so
right
abrupt.
on a dime, sort of situation.
So there you go. That's basically what happens. Cillian did die, right? He died when the creature. Or did she stop him?
I don't know.
No,
Cillian
she
died.
stopped him. No, because he was against the thing, and she used the metal rod. No, so
Yeah, I
he
was
survived
about to
too.
say, it was,
Everyone survives. There's no stakes.
Well, awesome African homeboy.
Jaime Hansu.
Yeah.
So Jaime Hansu is featured very shortly in the trailer, and he's got
he's like very briefly
he's got like
in the
4
film,
minutes of
dude.
screen
He's
time.
like not
they
even...
showed in one of the trailers someone getting pulled under a door. I was like, that looks like Jaime Hansu.
Yeah.
It was Jaime Hansu getting pulled under the door. So. Yeah, he doesn't make it, but everyone else makes it, and so there's very few stakes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just was just okay.
Yeah, and I know they're trying to make more of these, man, but I don't know. I am very curious how this is going to perform at the international box office and in the U.S. like sort of situation and everything.
So yeah, I think that's going to do it, you
Fuego.
guys. Why don't you guys let us know in the comments down below if you've watched it. What are your thoughts? Are you excited to see this if you haven't yet? If you have watched it, try and avoid spoilers in the comments down below.
Indeed.
So that way people that haven't watched to the spoiler section don't get ruined.
Yeah.
But would love to know your thoughts. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. We greatly appreciate you guys. Thank you to the Allied team for allowing us to come in and watch this one.
Thank
we
you,
definitely appreciate that as well.
Patrick, Jessica?
It was Jessica, yeah.
Jessica, yeah.
So yeah, thank you guys so much for including us. We appreciate it. If you guys want to become a patron, the link is in the description box down below. If you enjoyed the video, click the like button and subscribe if you have not yet, because we will be back next week to discuss The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias, I've been Jaime Fuego.
And remember,
Stay scared.